I'm now switching to a full screen view, which will give us a little bit more real estate to use when we start practicing with FTK Imager. A general note about organization of our laboratory exercises. Every handout like this will have a series of instructions which are pretty much step-by-step requirements to follow, like this one. So we have some objectives to accomplish, and it is also a series of spaces where we can fill in answers to the questions presented to us, or write our conclusions or any other notes that we need to provide as part of the laboratory exercise. So we have quite a bit of work today, so let's get started. So first of all, FTK Imager. Let's search Google FTK Imager. FTK Imager is a product of Access Data Company, who is also distributing forensic toolkit software, which is quite popular commercial forensic tool. FTK Imager is a free tool provided by Access Data, and when you click on the download form, you just have to provide your information here, fill in this form, and then you can submit it, and they will send you an email with the download link. You can read in the description here that FTK Imager is a data preview and imaging tool to acquire data, digital evidence, and in forensically sound manner by creating copies of data without making changes to the original drive. So that's the primary use of this tool, and that's how we're going to use it today. So just go ahead, download and install, and it should be able to give you an icon on your desktop. This is a Windows tool, so you need to have a machine running Windows to be able to install it. This is an example of FTK Imager on my desktop, and when you run it, I strongly advise that you actually right-click and run it as administrator, because for our purposes you'd have to have administrator privileges to access your physical drives. So when I run it as administrator, it starts and runs, and this is the main view of the software. So in the file menu we have these options that are available to us, and notice that in addition to working with disks, hard drives, USB drives, and all other media, it also allows you to capture computer memory and store it in a raw file, so you can actually analyze chunks of memory present on a computer system if you'd like to do something like this. Let's bring back our handout for the lab. So I mentioned here that you need to use administrative permissions and run it as administrator to be able to access all of the functions. So the first objective here is to take a look inside FTK Imager at our local folders and files. So let's launch File Explorer. Right here I'm already running a copy of File Explorer, and our first job is to create these files with this content as an example. We already have a folder named CIT155. I suggest that you also choose a simple path on one of the hard drives that you will be using in this course, and these are the names of the files to create. So remember, I ask you to make sure that you display file name extensions. Sometimes we have to rename these extensions, and unless you're using this option, you will not be able to properly rename the file. but today just be sure that you click on the view and turn on display of file extensions. I'm now going to copy the name of this file, right click, new text document. The files that we're going to be using in this part of the exercise are just plain text document without any kind of formatting or any other binary parts, and we'll name it doc.text. So just copy and paste the name. I also recommend that in your file view you choose an option to display the details about the files. So this gives you some details about the modification date, the type of the file, and of course its size. Obviously we just created the file, so it's empty. It has nothing in it. So just copy this carefully, not to add any extra characters in this text. Just be sure to create a file that contains this information. So copy this, and if I double click on my system, text files are opening by default inside Notepad. If I paste it here, just be sure not to create any new lines. This is the only content that you want to store in this file. Just save the information and close it. So let's create a new file, doc_dot, same process, new text document, rename the file, and enter the content. If you take a look at these two examples, the only difference between the two is the period at the end of the content of the second file. That's why it's named _dot. We will also create an empty file called empty.text. So I'm saving this one, and the next file is empty.text. And there's also a file that I'm asking you to create with your name in it. I'll just use the name examiner. Okay. So in the next step, we're going to launch FTK Imager and proceed to use this folder as evidence. I already started my FTK Imager. So what I would like to do is click File, Add Evidence Item, the first choice right here. And you can see that there are possibility to use a physical drive to preview inside FTK Imager, to use a logical drive, to use an image file, already existing content of an image file, and also open contents of a folder, which will be our choice. You may be wondering what is the difference between the physical drive and a logical drive. The physical drive is a way for FTK Imager to access hardware directly using its own implementation. If your choice is a logical drive, then FTK Imager will be relying on the function of the operating system, just like this File Explorer window, to access the files. The difference, of course, is that the FTK Imager will never attempt to change anything on the system, but this is the difference between the physical and logical.